Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us today for this research symposium on education equity in the social studies. I'm Michael Solom. I'm a professor of geography at Texas State University. I'm delighted that we're joined today by several folks who have worked with the National Assessment of Educational Progress for many years. The NAEP is popularly referred to as the nation's report card. And 2 years ago, we learned from the National Assessment Governing Board about the results of the 2018 Nation's Report Card for Civics, US History, and Geography. The report cards provide a lot of detail about what young people know in these subject areas, but they do not explain the results. So the purpose of today's symposium is on the data and tools available from the NAEP for research in social studies education. NAEP is uniquely positioned to support empirical research that can move the field from a description of student outcomes to an explanation of those outcomes. And as we will see, NAEP offers an opportunity to address important questions about educational equity in the social studies. And so for today, here's our program. We're going to begin shortly with a presentation about NAEP, what it is, some examples of NAEP social studies assessment items. We'll learn a little bit more about the nature of the data that NAEP collects and some of the training opportunities that are available to researchers. And then later this afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll take a look at some examples of NAEP research in social studies subject areas, specifically US history and geography. And then finally, at 3 o'clock this afternoon Eastern Time, we'll take a look at some other data and methods that can support geographic analysis of education and student outcomes, and some of the ways that researchers are linking NAEP data to other large-scale federal data sets. So I think we have a pretty interesting program, a great lineup of speakers. And without any further ado, we'll get to our first presenter. But first, those of you in the audience, feel free to post your questions in the Q&A field on the menu bar for the presenters. And at the end of each presentation, we will have some time to address your questions. So without further ado, let's get started. Our first presenter, Emmanuel Sikali, is a senior research scientist and a data scientist at the Assessment Division of the National Center for Education Statistics inside the Institute of Education Science of the US Department of Education. He has served cumulatively as a senior research scientist for the Assessment Division of NCES and as project director of EdSurvey. Dr. Sikali's interests are research into student learning, development of tools that give insight into students' cognition, and mentoring the next generation of researchers. Emmanuel, I will stop my
Michael.
share. Hello.
Yes, how are you?
Good, thanks for joining us today. I'm going to stop my share.
It looks like that I'm not able to share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
I'm going to fix that for you right now. Okay, so now it says all panelists can share. So you should be good. There you go.
Okay, let me F5, just a second. F5, yes. Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. And thank you for having me today. During our time today, I will only be able to give you a taste of the critical activities that make NAEP run and help the program earn its reputation as a gold standard. I will also provide a lot of tools that I will also provide links to a lot of tools that, as you embark on exploring the NAEP data and research using NAEP data, you will need. So this presentation is broken into 6 key areas: governance, assessment, content and design, development and administration, reporting and dissemination, participants, stakeholders and expert panels, and resources for researchers. We will start with governance. Key governance takeaways include: NAEP operates under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, later reauthorized as the Every Student Succeed Act of 2015. Generally, the governing board develops policy and oversees NAEP, and NCES design and administers the assessment. NCES is mandated to administer mathematics and reading for grade 4 and 8 every other year, and for grade 12 every 4 years. NCES and the governing board don't do it alone. We work with a family of contractors who help ensure that the program runs smoothly and successfully. NAEP is a product of the US Department of Education within the Institute of Education Sciences, led by Director Mark Schneider. Within the Institute is NCES, led by Acting Commissioner Carr. NCES is the primary federal entity for collecting and analyzing data related to education in the US and other nations. An associate commissioner is responsible for national and international large-scale assessments, including NAEP and international activity program. The National Assessment Governing Board is an independent, non-partisan board. Governor Halle Barber serves as the governing board chair, and as executive director, Leslie Muldoon oversees the execution of policies and projects initiated by the board. The next area is assessment content and design. Key takeaways include: NAEP assessment can generally be broken into 2 components: main NAEP and long-term trend. We'll take a look at what the differences between those are on the next slide. When participating in NAEP, students complete cognitive items. In addition to cognitive items, students, teachers, and schools administrators complete contextual or survey questionnaires. Students are selected to participate in the NAEP assessment NAEP are sampled in school proportionate to size in particular state and selected urban district. Math, reading, science, and writing are assessed at the national and state level. All other subjects are assessed at the national level only. So if you pay attention, so this will mean that social studies, so that means civics, history, and geography are assessed at the national level only. I mentioned that the 2 components of NAEP are main and long-term trend. Main NAEP consists of grade-based assessments, including mathematics, reading, science, and other subjects administered at the national level, state level, and select district level through the trial urban district assessments. Long-term trend NAEP consists of mathematics and reading, age-based assessments administered to 9, 13, and 17-year-olds. Although long-term trend and main NAEP both assess mathematics and reading, there are several differences in the content. Is the content assessed, how often the assessment is administered, and how results are reported. These These and other differences mean that results for long-term trend and main NAEP cannot be compared directly. National assessments, national NAEP data are available for all subjects for mathematics, reading, and previously assessed art. So if you look, you will see that the fifth, history, sixth, geography, and seventh is civics. Those are the symbols that we use to represent each of the subjects. So for example, the first one will be mathematics. So all of these subjects are reported at a national level. And as I mentioned earlier, you will see that mathematics and reading are administered at the state level. They are also administered for this urban district. So the urban district program is also known, the urban district is also known as TUDA. TUDA began in 2006 district to allow reporting of NAEP results for large urban school districts. Over the years, the TUDA program has grown substantially, with 27 districts participating in 2019. Now, let's talk more about the design of the NAEP assessment. Each student receives 2 cognitive blocks and some survey questionnaires that are assembled in a test booklet. Test booklets are built as part of a spiral design. By using a spiral design, NAEP does not need to administer the whole assessment to each participating student. We can sample enough students to obtain precise results for each test question. We start with individual subject-specific cognitive items that are divided into pools of items known as blocks. So for example, in front of you, A is a block and B is a block. In addition to blocks of cognitive items, there are also questionnaire-specific blocks that collect contextual information about students' educational experiences and opportunities. These blocks include core questions, questions about students' resources at home or their access to technology, as well as questions that reflect the subject of the NAEP assessment the student has completed. We have talked about what individual students can expect when participating in the NAEP, but how are school and students sampled? The screen here calls out the school sampling process. Step 1, schools are identified based on the Department of Education's public school system database that we call CCD. Schools are classified into groups or strata based on type of location and then by racial ethnic composition. Step 3, schools are sorted by a student achievement measure. For example, school level results on the state tests to ensure NAEP represents all levels of school performance. Step 4, the school groups are then placed into a comprehensive order list. Step 5, NCES draws a separate sample of school from each group with probability proportional to school size. Step 6, a list of selected schools is sent to each state Department of Education to confirm eligibility. Part 3 is development and administration. The key takeaways are the National Assessment Governing Board defines the content to be assessed. The Governing Board also develops the content framework and specification. NCES operationalizes the NAEP assessment through the item development process, NCES also collects scores, analyzes, and reports of NAEP data. Altogether, an assessment cycle can span up to 5 years. So for example, for the social studies data collection in 2018, we can remember that the assessment was administered digitally from January to March 2018 at grade 8. We have national samples of 8th grade from 780 schools across the nation. And you can see in green the individual sample size for each of the assessments. For example, US history. For US history, we had a sample of 16,400 students, while for civics, we had a sample of 13,400 students. Let's talk about the delivery model. Under the current delivery model, we conduct the assessment at each sample school in 1 day. Field staff dropped into the school and set up a controlled environment that relies entirely on NAEP-owned devices. There are the student tablets. Currently, a typical NAEP assessment includes a morning and an afternoon session with about 25 students in each session. Our assessment platform is eNAEP, and the full eNAEP assessment is installed on each student tablet. A monitor tablet is used by field staff for each real-time monitoring and each student's progression. The student tablets then communicate with an administrator tablet that collects all the data from the student's tablet in real time. Each student's assessment data are saved and transmitted to the administrator's tablet, and the administrator tablet then transmit the data to the NAEP central server. All these devices are owned by NAEP, and all of them are currently Microsoft Surface Pro tablets. We also use NAEP-owned routers to create a private, secure NAEP network that we carry into the school and set up on the spot. Let's talk about reporting and dissemination. So this really concerns how we share the data we receive. The key takeaways are NAEP results are reported in 3 major ways: by scale score, by percentile scores, and by achievement levels. The governing board sets, plans, and executes the events, and the NCES commissioner releases the data. Additionally, NCES conducts special studies and analyses to further understand students' academic achievement, and the governing board conducts special studies to inform decision-making. So for example, here are the results that we reported. The slide is supposed to say 2018, sorry, that we reported. So you see that for civics, the mean scale score of students were 153, for US history was 263, and for geography was 258. So there are several resources that anybody who wants to explore the NAEP results should be familiar with. First, we have a digital repository of NAEP reports. I have placed the URL there. You can go there and you can literally explore the results of any specific subject of interest. But to be able to do that very well, it will also be very important to actually know the framework. That is the blueprint of the assessment. What is it that we are measuring? Then we have the NAEP Data Explorer. Oftentimes, the results that we report are not sufficient. You might still need to know about some other variables or how they correlate to the scale score. So we always encourage people to go to the NAEP Data Explorer, it allows you to analyze the data in real time, simply by clicking and following the flow of the tool. Then we have the NAEP question tools. On this here, you can go to this tool to see the types of questions that we ask students. You can see types of question, and that will give you a good sense of what is it that we are really after when we are assessing students. So, Part 5 is participants, stakeholders, and expert panels. We've talked about the roles and responsibilities of NCES, the governing board, and contractors, but there are many other individuals and groups that make the NAEP program run smoothly. The successful NAEP administration requires the support and cooperation of many participants, including school administrators, teachers, and students. Our state and district partnership are key to NAEP's recruitment, administration, and dissemination of results. Program efforts are informed by various thought leaders and expert panels that help ensure NAEP maintains its status as the gold standard for large-scale assessments. NCES collaborates with a variety of expert panels and advisory groups who provide expert insight on all aspects of the NAEP program. For example, the NAEP Validity Study Panel, an independent panel of experts, meets to commission and discuss research addressing validity considerations for NAEP. The Principals Panel Standing Committee is a distinguished group of principals from diverse backgrounds and regions of the country. Panel members share their unique points of view on how NCES can design NAEP operations to better accommodate the varying needs of US schools, educators, and students. Beginning in 2014, the NAEP Innovation Symposium has been convened annually by NCES and ETS to discuss NAEP's future needs and emerging trends in education and technology. Now, let's talk about the resources for researchers. So I will talk about data access, restricted use license for data, and I'll talk about training about training. So NCES, most of NAEP data are classified as restricted use data because this file contain individually identifiable information which is confidential and protected by the law. And this same law provides for security and privacy of personal data. Failure to comply with these laws to use the data only for the intended purpose are punishable by fine and or jail time. So for you researchers to have access to this data to analyze the NAEP data, you will need a license. A license means that IES or NCES loans the qualified organization the data under certain conditions. So if you notice on the third bullet, we didn't say loans the qualified researcher. No, NCES. So if you, a researcher, really need this data, you will apply through your organization or the school or the university where you work, it will be lending the data, NCES will lend the data to your university, and you will use, and that's where you use it. So if you were to leave your university, for example, to go to a different one, you cannot take the data with you. You will go there and apply to that organization again to have access to the data. So to qualify to get this license, the user must state a justification for the data for why you want to use this data. You have to submit some required documents, and you have to agree to some conditions about data storage and IES oversight. Storage requires that the data be stored in specific conditions, and oversight means that you agree that IES that IES can stop by organization and verify that the data is stored where it is where you promised for it to be stored. So also, really to apply for this data, you will need, so when you look at the, when you go to apply for this data, you will need to have the following individual clearly defined or identified. We have the principal project officer of PPO. It is the individual who is responsible for the day-to-day operations involving the requested data. PPO must be a postdoc or higher. Then we have the senior officer. Sorry about all the abbreviations. We are the government, we use a lot of them. Is the person in the organization who has the legal authority to sign a contract for the organization. And then there's also the system security officer is the person who oversees security of the data. And then, so to really have a better understanding of all of this process, how to get the data, we have a receipt use data manual that contains all the information and all the links and all the steps that one has to follow to have access to the data. Now, we have here some other resources that we have for researchers. The very first one I'll point out is that we have trainings at the AIA and NCME annual conferences. During these conferences, we mostly teach about how to access the NAEP data and how to analyze it. There is a cost for that. We also, other resources include, so the second grade is all the other resources, and I'm going to go and talk about each of them individually. So there's a NAEP research and dissemination group at ARR. We have the URL, there's a URL to the right. So this particular group does work on things like, that group develops EDGE survey. I'll talk some more about EDGE survey in a little bit. We also do some work with the process data. Inside that group also, there is the internship program. I'll talk some more about it and some trainings. So let's talk about the trainings through ARR. Before the pandemic, we used to post trainings where we selected about 15 participants that we invited to Washington, DC for a 2-day training. And we paid for the travel and paid you a per diem for the day. And we literally provide you a thorough training, very step-by-step with some hands-on example and a lot of stuff to really help answer all your questions and show you how to record the variable. Did you select the right variable? Is it the right one to use for analysis and so on? Unfortunately, because of the COVID, we have not had a training for the last 2 years. For 2021, in August of this year, this is not posted yet, we will have a training. We have a secondary data analysis training that will be conducted virtually. My intention for this training is to have the training happen, I think, every Thursday or every Friday for a series of 4 to 5 weeks. The first week will basically talk about the introduction to NAEP and explain the methodology and all that you need to know about that. The second The second week, on the same day at the same time, we will talk about the psychometrics and the sampling behind NAEP. And then the third training will show you how to use data tools to analyze the data. And then the fourth training will go into actually using Edge Survey into actually analyzing the real data. So stay tuned for that. It's not, we do not have the dates yet, and it's not posted yet. Now, then we have the process data training. So let me stop here for a moment and talk about the process data. When we had until 2017, all assessments were on paper and pencil. So we could only see that the student got it right or got it wrong. However, with digitally based assessments, we can collect keystrokes, navigation, and so on. In general, we can collect students' interaction with the physical computer, with the assessment platform, and with the item. This gives us a lot of information. This data is massive, voluminous, and very complicated. So I started a process data center at ARR where we begin to learn how to access this data, understand, for example, how the student navigates, how often they come in the item, when they open an item, when they are inside the block and open an item, do they just stare at the item? Do they change their answers? Do they type, erase? What do they do? So this data can allow us to really get a different type of insights on how the student perform in assessment. So we started this I think we had our first process data training was at the AERA in Toronto. And so we've had several trainings for process data with the AERA. And currently there is a training that's supposed to start August 20th. It's going to be held the subsequent 2 Fridays, and it is open for applications. It'll be digital, so you basically just have to apply. If you are accepted, you just commit to be available on Fridays from, I think, for 3 hours, and then you can log in for your own remote computers and follow the trainings. This also be a hands-on, where you'll be able to ask questions and you'll have people helping you to play around with the process data. Now, let's talk about other resources. I know, and we know that the software to analyze the data is always a big issue, and it can be very cumbersome at times. So we have developed Edge Survey. That's the first bullet on the other resources. We developed Edge Survey. I forgot the column. For the Edge Survey, Edge Survey is an R package. It's open source. You can just go to CRAN. For those who don't know what CRAN is Comprehensive R Archive Network, and download the package. Currently, we released version 2.7 a couple of weeks ago. You can download it. There are a lot of vignette or help tools that will help you really access the data and how to analyze the data. This part, Edge Survey stands for Education Survey. So this tool is particular to analyze NCES data, and it's free for you. So all you need is to get the data and to download Edge Survey, and you are ready to go. We also have summer internships. During this, so we started the summer internships about 4 years ago. This program has been very popular. We select PhD students that we think qualify. It can be in any field. It can be psychometrics, statistics, computer science, policy, graphics, visualization, and so on. So we select them. We select about 4 or 5 of them. We give them a stipend and we bring them to Washington, D.C. before the COVID. And we pair each of the intern with a couple of researchers who basically mentor them and hold their hand and help them. The intent of this internship is to create the next generation of NAEP researchers. So we really work with them and show them how it is done, how research is done. The program has been very successful because besides learning only about NAEP, they have a lot of the interns have learned about other things, and this has allowed them to get postdocs at places like Harvard. Some of them have gotten jobs at Google and Facebook. And we have even hired some of them who now work with us. Another resource that will be very important for researchers to know is the NAEP clinical documentation. This is a very voluminous document that details everything that NAEP does. So if you are curious about how we score the items, there is a scoring chapter. If you are curious about calibration, there is a calibration chapter. If you are curious about sampling, there is a whole sampling section. So this document really answers a lot of questions that we have. Then we also have the NAEP Research Center. This NAEP Research Center has links to a variety, a plethora of different things that a researcher might be interested in. From there, you can access the NAEP questions tool. You can access the NAEP comparison tool. Literally everything that you want is available at this location. So I'll stop here, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions if Michael thinks that is the right thing to do at this time.
Yes, Emmanuel, thank you so much for your comprehensive overview of NAEP. It's a fascinating program, and it's given all the complexities involved in making it actually happen. And it's really extraordinary to see how it all works behind the scenes. We do have some questions. I have a few, but let's actually go over to the Q&A field. And I see a question here from Joseph Stoltman. And I think you can probably see that as well, Emmanuel. He's asking about the survey software.
Yes, it is available. No, so I need to make a little bit of correction. So R is an open source. R is an open source programming language that's available there. People use it to develop all sorts of tools. We don't have to pay a license. We don't have to pay anybody about anything. So the repository, the place where all of the R resources that R has sanctioned as usable are located on CRAN. CRAN stands for Comprehensive R Archive Network. So when we develop, for example, the Earth survey software I talked about, we have to send it to CRAN. They have to make sure that the software satisfies all the open source policy and everything, and then they post it for anybody to download. So Earth survey is developed by NCES and the research and the development team. After it is done, we post it on CRAN. So if you go to CRAN, so if you basically just Google CRAN, capital letters, all of it, you'll get to the Comprehensive R Archive Network, and then you search for Earth survey, and it will take you to the page where Earth survey is located. That's where you download. That's where you will download Earth survey. And then when you download Earth survey from there, there are also some users manual that you can download. And they'll guide you on how to use Earth survey. Currently, I am also developing a short video of about 20 to about 45 minutes that will guide people to basically on how to download Earth survey and use it. It just basically gives you the first step, like go here, type this here, click this, and so on. So I'm working on that. I hope that clarifies that. I hope that helps Joseph. If not, I'm more than happy to, if you can elaborate the question, I'd be more than happy to expand.
Great. Thank you, Emmanuel. And Joe, if you need any follow-up, go ahead and type it into that field.
Oh,
go ahead.
He said, can it be used with NAEP and non-NAEP data such as may be available other? So EDGE survey is developed to analyze all of NCES data. So you can use to analyze NAEP, TIMSS, PIRLS, PISA, ECLSK, National Health Educational Survey, School Crime Survey, and all of that. It is there to analyze all of NCES data. So when I say design to analyze, what do I mean? I think it doesn't do me any justice just to say that. So let me explain a little bit. So when you get NCES data, I'm going to focus on NAEP in this particular case. There are some design elements in the data set that have to be set in other software for you to analyze the data. For example, the weights and the replicate weights that are used to estimate the variance. Then you have the plausible values that are used for the scale scores that we report. Some of these variables are there. So when for example you install the NAEP, you upload the NAEP data into EDGE survey, EDGE survey automatically sets all the filters and knows all of these variables, and they are available for you to use right away. So that's why we created EDGE survey, to try to minimize that cognitive load, that cognitive complexity that is needed to really access the data. For example, Michael have analyzed this data. You are aware that you have to know about the design and all of these different things to access the data. EDGE survey automatic, when you put in, for example, NCES data, EDGE survey automatically knows what data file it is, knows what are the design features of this data, and it automatically sets them in the background to allow you to use the data right away. That's why we created EDGE survey. So I hope that will give a more complete answer to Joseph.
Yeah, thank you, Emmanuel. I encourage other questions from the attendees, but I have a few I'll pose in the meantime, Emmanuel. One of the things that we hope comes out of this symposium is the collaboration among social studies education researchers using the NAEP data sets. With regard to the restricted license, or excuse me, the license for the restricted use data, is it possible, if you have a team of researchers at different institutions, for that team to be on one license, or would it be necessary for multiple licenses to be issued if you say we have a collaborative network of several people?
I think that several licenses will be issued for each institution. However, the benefit you have is if you are using EDGE survey, you can share the code. Yeah, because for example, if you have a code that's doing something, or somebody is stuck, so you can send the code. Like I'm stuck, you can share the code among yourself because you have the same data, and you can run and see the same thing.
Okay, interesting.
Because Michael, if you remember, I think you use AM, right?
For the software that we're using, we're using HLM.
Oh, HLM, okay. So yeah. You know, for example, that some of these software sometimes do not give you any code that you can share. So so EDGE survey allows you to create the code. By the way, EDGE survey has a multi-level modeling embedded. We've developed that inside EDGE survey. EDGE survey has all of that. So yeah, Elsevier does multi-level modeling, and Elsevier does a lot of things. You have to try it. It is it does a lot of things. So that allows you then, in that case, to create a code and share the code. You can share the code, send the code to everybody, and they can run it and see and have the same thing that you say.
Okay, it's good to know. I have a couple other questions for you, and that is with regard to the 3 social studies assessments and the most recent in 2018. I'm curious about the extent to which comparative analysis is possible. So with all the background questionnaires that are administered to students and to teachers and to principals, I'm wondering, do you know the extent that the same students are taking those 3 assessments and completing those questionnaires, or are there variables generated by those questionnaires that are consistent across 3 subject areas, so that would make some way of doing some type of comparative analysis?
The first thing I will say is that no students takes 2 assessments. Okay. So they are equivalent samples, but no student take more than 1 assessment. And then can you let me stop sharing, and then I'm gonna stop sharing and go back to you. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to post the survey questions that the students, I'm gonna post the survey question that the students, I'm gonna post a link to the survey questions that we administer, that we give to the students, so that you can actually see the survey questions yourself. And then you can because that would be the best way for you, is to see the survey questions, and then and then that way you can compare the questions yourself.
Okay, great.
So I will post them on I will post a link to the survey questions in the chat.
So for example, it would be interesting to know whether certain instructional modalities or processes are having a significant relationship with achievement in geography, and would that relationship also appear in history or civics if we have the shared variables?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
You could look at things like that.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, and so my one final question I have is, I know that with every assessment, NAEP releases items to the public, and you can see those items on that NAEP questions tool. For researchers, is it possible to in any way gain access to the non-publicly released items in order to do some type of, say, content analysis of the subject matter? I know they're not in the restricted data set, but there might be interest in the research community if we can actually analyze, the content of different items to get a little clearer sense of how students are responding to different areas of subject matter.
Yes, the answer is yes, but you will have to go through a more stringent process to actually see this item. That will require you traveling to Washington, D.C., signing some papers that we are not going to disclose the items because the data bank is data bank, and then you will sit in a room where you can look at these questions.
Okay. Okay, so it's possible, but we have to be physically in DC and non-disclosure agreements and so forth. Okay, very good to know. Okay, excellent. Well, if there are no other questions for Emmanuel, let's take a moment to thank him for his presentation today. Oh yeah.
I just posted the link to the NAEP survey questionnaire. So if you go there, you will see, if you go on that link, you'll see the questionnaires for the students, you see the questionnaire for all the different questions for the years and the subject and all that we ask the students.
Perfect. Very helpful. Well, thank you again, Emmanuel. That was great. Learned a lot. And so everybody, we'll take a break now, and then our next session will start at 1 p.m. Eastern time, about an hour from now. And we'll take a look at some examples of research that's being done in NAEP social studies areas. And so you'll come back to this same link. There's not a new link. You just use the same one that you used to join this first session today. And so, Emmanuel, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And please extend our appreciation to your colleagues at NCES for all the work they do.
I surely will. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, everybody. We'll see you in about an hour. Bye-bye.